Greetings, warriors of the Imperium. Occasionally, there may be minor pronunciation issues, but I'm working to improve the quality of my videos. Patience is bitter, but its fruit is sweet.
A Genestealer Cult is a Xenos-worshipping secret society made up of and controlled by tyrannid Genestealers that thrives in the dark corners of the Imperial underworld across the galaxy. Secretive, stealthy, and utterly malignant, Genestealer cults are the cancers growing unseen in the hidden spaces of mankind's realm. Their purpose is to rise up and take control of Imperial worlds in the name of a Xenos god that is actually a tyrannid Hive fleet. Once the world is under their control, the cultists' psychic emanations are picked up by the closest Hive fleet's extension of the Hive mind, which is then drawn to consume the world, cultists and all. Some cultists are truly monstrous, skulking along dank tunnels with robes or Hessian sacks covering their hybrid Xenos anatomies. Others are merely pallid and bald, able to pass for loyal Imperial citizens whilst their worm-formed tattoos remain hidden. These latter-generation brethren mingle amongst the herd of mankind like wolves in sheep's clothing, working so hard amongst the crumbling machineries of human industry that none spare them a second glance. But under their work fatigues and rough miner's apparel, they all bear the mark of the alien. Once their brotherhood becomes strong enough and all is in place for their great uprising, the Genestealer Cult will make its play. The militant throng boils by the thousand from sewers, tunnels, and basements, seeping from the spires high above like insects pouring from a hidden nest. On this darkly glorious day of war, the cult's warriors are already 10 steps ahead of the enemy. Saboteurs have shattered the supply lines of those who would oppose them, hidden agents have assassinated key commanders, and routes of escape have been cut off by demolition crews and blast teams. Those wise enough to flee find the city streets and arterial passageways blocked by burning wreckage, or by packs of hybrid creatures waiting to pounce. Every eventuality the cult's masters could foresee is accounted for, every advantage stacked in their favor. The enemy find their ammunition crates empty, their fuel reserves dry, their transport craft hijacked, and their supporting fleet holed and listing in orbit. When the cult attacks, the enemy is already surrounded, stranded, and half-beaten, ripe for a slaughter long planned. The butchery the cult metes out upon its enemies is terrible indeed. Though the greater masses of these hordes are armed little better than planetary militia, their sheer numbers and fanatical devotion make them a fierce prospect in a firefight. High-level threats will be ambushed, not only by mutant hybrids that hiss and shriek as they impale the foe upon their claws and bladed limbs, but also by the pure-strain Genestealers of generations past and present. The commanders of the enemy force are met in battle by the leaders of the cult, the Primus, an inspirational war leader, the Magus, a hypnotic telepath, and the Patriarch itself, a monstrous terror that crossed the vastness of space to bring disaster to the world. In truth, the cult is enthralled to a far greater power. Unseen and utterly beyond comprehension, this inevitable force, this great devourer, is drawn to the prey world by the very cult that seeks to conquer it. When the doomsayers of this dark dynasty cry that the end of the world is nigh, their claims are more accurate than even they imagine. From the dark depths and shadowy streets emerge the Genestealer cultists, malformed figures united by a sinister worship of inscrutable star-born entities. Secretive, stealthy, and utterly malignant, they are the cankers growing unseen in the hidden spaces of the Imperium. Humanity is beset on all fronts by Xenos raiders and the nightmarish forces of chaos. Billions of lives are sacrificed upon the altar of war every day to keep the enemy at bay. Yet the most insidious threat to mankind's survival may already have seeped into the bloodstream of the Imperium. Embedded into the infrastructure of countless seemingly loyal worlds, the Genestealer cults bide their time, spreading tendrils of corruption through the native population until they are ready to begin their bloody insurrections. Once unleashed, they rise up in a surging tide, armed with stolen Imperial weaponry and crude industrial tools turned to horrific purposes. When the Imperium first encountered Genestealers upon the moons of Imgarl, they thought them to be a unique alien species. In fact, as the Ordo Xenos discovered after a harrowing series of investigations, they are the vanguard organisms that the Tyrannid Hive fleets seed before them to create disunity and fear in their path. Resilient and possessed of razor-sharp claws that can carve through even Adeptus Astartes' warplate, Genestealers are used in open battle by the Hive fleets as shock troops. When infiltrating Imperial space, however, the Genestealers instead show their capacity for stealth and cunning. Slinking and creeping, stalking and murdering in silence, solitary Genestealers stow away on Imperial spacecraft and spread along space lanes like a virus. In theory, it only takes one Genestealer successfully slipping aboard a cargo freighter and reaching a populated world to spell the doom of an entire sector. There are legends in the Imperium of titanic space hulks, infested with tens of thousands of these creatures. Such a nest could bring utter catastrophe to swaths of the Imperium. Should a Genestealer reach a suitable world, its dark work begins in earnest. In the space of a few Terran years, hundreds of civilians will have been abducted by the creature and infected with Tyrannid genetic structures. In time, the infected give birth to vile hybrids of Xenos and human. Those descended from the first victims are unmistakably alien, with large domed heads and razor-sharp talons. As the genetic corruption continues to spread, subsequent generations are born who can pass as human and are able to blend in with the wider population, and even imperial organizations such as the Adeptus Arbites, the Departamento Munitorum, and the Astra Militarum. As the cult's numbers grow, more specialized hybrids are created to serve the Genestealer, now worshipped as the Patriarch. Maguses are psychically gifted individuals tainted by the Patriarch's will, tasked with converting key targets within the planet's government and military leadership. The hybrid masses are organized and led by primuses, generals, and ambush specialists responsible for coordinating the eventual uprising. Nexoses provide tactical support to their primuses' strategic plans, their command of detail and contingency second to none. Sanctuses act as assassins and locuses as bodyguards, even as clamavuses preach the word of the cult and foil enemy communications. Atalan jackals speed into battle upon dirt cycles and wolf quads, harrying the enemy flanks whilst pure-strain Genestealers and aberrant monstrosities, sometimes bolstered by the gene alchemists known as biophaguses, act as shock troops. Whether it takes a handful of solar months or many standard years, eventually the cult will go on the warpath. Only then will the Patriarch send the synaptic order to rise up and drown the planet in blood. When the creature's minions receive the psychic command to begin the insurrection, the hybrids arm themselves with purloined military gear and mining tools and surge forth from their hidden lairs in massed tides. Guided by the cunning will of their war leaders, they strike first at key tactical locations like communications outposts, spaceports, and munition yards. Stripped of its defenses and ability to call for help, the planet is left ripe for conquest. In a frenzy of brutal violence, the cultist uprising falls upon those enemies who pose the greatest threat to the cult's agenda. Bones are shattered by ear-bursting blasts from seismic cannons. Weaponized rock drills are thrust into vulnerable flesh in a horrifying eruption of gore, and mining charges are used as makeshift grenades. The banners and sigils of the cult are unveiled at last, standards and worm-formed totems held high by acolyte Eichenwards, whose presence inspires the Broodkin to new heights of savage fervor. During the many long years of preparation for this moment, the cult will have stolen and sequestered many vehicles to aid it in its murderous campaign. Rugged Goliath trucks and Goliath rock grinders, a common sight in mines and manufactoria all across the Imperium, are turned to violent purpose. Mounted with a range of heavy armaments, Goliath trucks rush broods of acolytes to the front lines, carving a path across even the most rugged of terrain and releasing an unceasing hail of bullets to tear through enemy infantry. Rock grinders simply crash into the center of the foe's formations, reaping a hideous toll as their saw-toothed drill dozer blades grind screaming bodies into bloody paste. Should the threat of enemy armor emerge, the cult will respond by deploying stolen Lehman Russ tanks and Sentinel walkers, piloted by neophyte hybrids who laid hidden in the ranks of human armies for solar decades. Utterly loyal to the Patriarch, they turn their guns on their former comrades without a second thought. The psychological impact of this sudden betrayal is a weapon in itself. All too often, the stimulus for this uprising is the approach of a tyrannid biofleet, those the cult in their delusions see as saviors from above. As the Hive fleet vomits its swarms of warrior organisms into the stricken world's atmosphere, the cultists sing rapturous prayers to their deliverers. Even as the Tyranids exterminate and devour every source of biomass on the planet, still the cultists hold faith in their corrupted hearts that these voracious aliens will elevate the faithful, helping them to transcend their mortal weaknesses. Eagerly they await the blessed oneness of form and purpose they have been promised. For a while at least, the Tyranids and the Patriarch's brood fight as one, the hive mind's psychic control ensuring that the cult is not preyed upon. Magusis hurl illusions that warp and tear at the minds of the enemy, turning them upon each other with sadistic pleasure. The Patriarch's generals marshal their forces with consummate skill, spending their warriors' lives by the thousands to open a path for the Tyranid assault. In this final exalted hour, the Patriarch himself enters the fray, and his faithful are sent into a zealous frenzy as their prophet rips the unworthy apart with razored claws and shredding fangs. As soon as the last of the defenders is overrun by this tide of Cheatin and scything claws, the hive mind subsumes the Patriarch into its greater consciousness. It becomes merely another organism in the Tyranid swarm, the psychic broodmind that once united its cult severed in an instant. In an awful moment of realization, the cultists at last understand the fell truth. Those same creatures from beyond the stars that they once worshipped as gods are revealed as their doom incarnate. For to the Tyranids, all flesh is much the same. The first confirmed Imperial engagement with the Genestealer Cult occurred upon the mining colony of Ghosar Quintus in 680, M41. Investigating what appeared to be a perversion of the Imperial Creed, Inquisitor Chegrin led a team of Tempestus Scions to Ghosar Quintus and ventured into the depths of the Great Pit. The deeper Chegrin ventured, the more evidence of deviance he found. Strangely, his last communique stated that all was well, and that the Trist dynasty that ruled Ghosar Quintus should be left to its own devices. It was a full standard year before Chagrin's fellows in the Holy Ordos of the Inquisition noticed that something was deeply wrong. A 5-man kill team of Deathwatch Space Marines was sent on a follow-up mission of lethal investigation, yet they too were swallowed by the mysteries of the Great Pit. Only when the steel-willed chaplain Orton Cassius mustered his own hand-picked kill team was the vile truth unearthed. Ghosar Quintus was home to a Xenos infestation. Kill Team Cassius fought through hundreds of Genestealer cultists as they plumbed the depths of the Trist dynasty's corrupted world. Though they made it out alive, the Space Marines were changed forever by the gruesome ordeal. Most shocking of all was not the Genestealer Patriarch that lurked at the heart of the cult, but the damning evidence in the mining cult's shipping holographs. Under the guise of industry, the Xenos-tainted Trist dynasty had spread its curse across not only the Ghosar system, but throughout the sector. The implications were staggering. Genestealers are vicious and frighteningly intelligent alien life forms. They are largely independent, capable of surviving alone for standard centuries. When encountered as part of a brood, however, a Gestalt psychic will bind them to one purpose. Originally encountered upon the moons of Imgarl, long before Hive Fleet Behemoth breached the Imperium, these beasts were once thought to be an entirely separate species to the teeming hordes of the Tyranids. Only when the Ordo Xenos conducted a harrowing program of investigations did they realize the truth, that the Genestealer was a vanguard creature of the encroaching Hive fleets, and that the Imgarl genus was but one example of the forms it could take. Genestealers are carried from world to world, much as a virus is carried from host to host, unseen and unbidden. Their physiques are so hardy that they can even survive in the cold vacuum of space. There are scattered reports of armies of these Xenos creatures emerging from honeycombed asteroids and torn open ghost ships. The most severe Genestealer infections have been traced to space hulks, vast conglomerate void ships that drift across the galaxy on the etheric tides of the warp. On such behemoths, Genestealers have been found not in 2s and 3s, but in their thousands. More commonly, small broods of Genestealers stow away upon the voidcraft of humanity's endless armadas. Able to fold their gangling physiques into relay pipes and crawl spaces, they can hide in even the smallest shuttles, entering a hibernatory state until they emerge from their sojourn to sow the seeds of destruction anew. Many a bulk transport has arrived at its destination carrying a lethal cargo indeed. When a Genestealer reaches a world ripe for infection, it will clamber into the dark and forgotten spaces of a populous area, lurking unseen as it prepares to spread its influence. As with all their void-born kind, the Genestealer is inhumanly patient, able to subsist on very little sustenance, and to wait for Terran decades if necessary before making its move. Once it is certain of being able to acquire victims whilst remaining undetected, it will begin to abduct them and implant them with its alien blight to make them unwitting hosts of a new generation of terror. A cult can start with but a single organism. Should a lone Genestealer reach an inhabited world, it will immediately go into hiding, emerging only on the blackest of nights. Those who fall prey to the Genestealer's silent ambushes are not torn apart for later consumption, as with most victims of the Tyrannid race, but instead put in thrall by its psychically hypnotic gaze. They are then impregnated with a portion of the creature's own biomass, delivered under the skin via a ribbed tube called an ovipositor. This process is known as the Genestealer's kiss. The resultant parasitism alters the infected's body until the Xenos taint runs throughout. It also alters the mind, forcing the victim through a bioneural psychic connection to revere the Genestealer as a messianic figure, the idol of an obsessive new religion. Whenever a Genestealer implants a victim, a horrific birth will soon follow whenever that individual, whether male or female, breeds with others of its species. The resultant Genestealer hybrids are grotesque and misshapen creatures that are as varied in form as they are hideous to behold. Certain features are common, such as bulbous craniums and snarling, needle-toothed maws, a pair of extra limbs ending in viciously sharp claws, truncated tail spikes, and mottled purplish skin. These initial hybrids are known as the first generation. The hideous hybrids of the first generation will reproduce with newly hypnotized members of the cult, who sire young in their turn. This gives rise to the second generation. These new creatures are hunched and stooped, not in the manner of the old or infirm, but more like pressured springs that are ready to explode into sudden movement. These hybrids may have 5 or even 6 limbs, but their eyes and mouths are like those of their human parents, and they can make themselves understood in low Gothic. Though their minds are still so alien that they defy analysis, the second generation is sapient enough to understand its host society. Some are even put to work in the industrial brotherhoods of their kin, their uncanny strength and resilience allowing them to use heavy mining tools and explosives with far more ease than a human operative. Pure strain Genestealers propagate with a hideous alien fecundity, infecting generations of human prey until the time is ready to strike. Each new batch of offspring descended from a single Genestealer patriarch seems more human than the last, as the Xenos germ seed is seemingly diluted, but within, the shape of the beast lurks unchanged. At the culmination of the curse's cycle, the original alien nightmares are born anew. As each cycle passes, the hybrid offspring evince fewer and fewer mutations from the human or other host species' genetic baseline. The third generation is typified by an upright stance. Though they appear human from a distance, On closer inspection, they have heavily ridged heads, mauve to violet skin, and may even hide a vestigial limb under their clothes. By the 4th generation, the scions of the Genestealer Cult can pass for fully human, unveiling themselves into positions of power to further the aims of the cult. Leaders of uncanny influence emerge within the hidden cult hierarchy, psychic magi and charismatic demagogues whose rhetoric inflames the subculture further. 4th generation cult members can breed true. They do not give birth to untainted humans, but instead to pure strain Genestealers, just as alien as the original progenitor of the cult. The parents of these 5th generation creatures see them not as the hideous, hissing changelings they truly are, but as soft-skinned human infants, innocent and sweet. They do everything they can to protect them, even giving their own lives if necessary. By this point, the curse's hold upon the dynasty is complete, and the brood cycle begins anew. The Genestealer at the heart of the cult, known as the Patriarch, has an inherent psychic control over every one of these minions, no matter the generation. The Patriarch unites them in a single sentience, a gestalt consciousness known as the brood mind, akin to the far larger Tyrannid Hive mind. It is this shared sentience that makes the cult so tight-knit and loyal, that gives them uncanny strength and speed in battle, and that seeks to undermine the spiritual sanctity of mankind. Such Xenos cults have thrived in the dark corners of the Imperium longer than any now suspect. On those occasions when they rise up in open rebellion, they can capsize a planet's defenses in a matter of solar hours. The cultists of these grand insurgencies have spent their whole lives preparing for the day of the final conquest. Generation after generation have been bred in secrecy, cycle after cycle bearing nauseating fruit. The infected have spread the curse to others and to their children, who in turn have infected more. Like a living virus, they breed exponentially, their numbers swelling until the rulers of the society's underworld are strong enough to seize the entire host planet. Though the later generations of each cycle have the appearance of common men and women, inside they are Xenos through and through. Their allegiance is owed only to the organisms that brought the Genestealer Curse to their world and the hybrids of their hidden kindred. Their patriarch, starborn and inhuman, squats at the center of a web of influence that expands until it covers the entire world. Every soul in the cult is mindlessly obedient to this repulsive creature and would give their lives to save it. Once the cult is fully mature, it seeks to propagate once more. Its leaders carefully send selected pure strains on long journeys to locate new feeding grounds, there to begin the whole hellish process over again. A full pure strain Genestealer starts the infection cycle by inserting their genetic material into a host victim. As the infestation spreads and the cult grows, the first Genestealer takes the role of a Genestealer Patriarch and often grows larger into an obese and psychic monstrosity. The infected Contagii. The host victims, or Contagii, return to their own societies and begin to have an urgent need to find a mate and begin a family. This mate also becomes infected with Genestealer DNA through sexual intercourse with the infected host. Contagii, many of whom become brood brothers, still physically resemble other members of their species, though they may have a slight blue or mauve pallor to their skin and can be psychically controlled by the Genestealer Patriarch through the brood mind to become mindless slaves, making them the perfect infiltrators. The psychic control of the Genestealer's kiss can be resisted by infected space marines, as seen with members of the Scythes of the Emperor who were infected by Genestealers on their homeworld of Sotha. However, even they wear psychic dampening hoods to keep out the broodmind's urgings. The first of a cult's vile children, a first-generation hybrid or Malignacci, is as much of a monster as it looks. More reminiscent of a Genestealer than a human, these foul creatures feature between 5 or 6 limbs, each one ending in sharp talons. These mutants often serve as acolyte hybrids. Their bulbous heads have the facial features of their Xenos gene father, with their skin taking on a purple hue. These creatures are little more than beasts, their instincts directing their every move. The second generation of hybrids are hunched and stooped, not in the manner of the old or infirm, but more like pressured springs, ready to explode into movement. Like the generation before them, second-generation hybrids, who also serve as acolyte hybrids, may have 5 or 6 limbs, but their eyes and mouth are more like their human parents, and they can make themselves understood in low Gothic. Though their minds are still so alien that they defy analysis, they are still sapient enough to understand their host society. Some are even put to work in the industrial brotherhoods of their kin, their uncanny strength and resilience allowing them to use heavy mining tools and explosives with far more ease than any mere human. Taking a fully upright stance, the third-generation hybrid is reminiscent of many mutants in Imperial society. Their foul features go unnoticed in the underhives of many Imperial worlds. However, on closer inspection, their alien form is revealed. They have heavily ridged heads, mauve to violet skin, and may even hide an extra clawed limb under their tattered clothes. True hybrids often become kellermorphs and loci. By the 4th generation, the scions of the Genestealer Cult can pass for fully human, unveiling themselves into positions of power to further the aims of their sinister cult. Most of these primaci serve as neophyte hybrids. A few members of this generation possess psychic powers and become a magus or Genestealer primus. Other types of 4th-generation hybrids include Clamavi, Nexoses, Sancti, and Biophagy. They are often noticed by their human overseers as dutiful, hard-working citizens, and as such, often find themselves above suspicion. Many of these hybrids join the Astra Militarum to spread their vile seed across the galaxy, starting new cults and claiming worlds for their 4-armed patriarch. Between the 4th and 5th generations of hybrids, the Genestealer Cult will prepare for all-out war. They will spawn hybrid metamorphs, creatures that echo the warrior bioforms of the Tyranid Hive fleets and are built only to serve as vicious cannon fodder for the coming battles. Paradoxically, the Genestealer's pure strain DNA re-emerges in the 5th generation of hybrids since the initial infection, giving birth to a full Tyranid pure strain Genestealer, albeit one showing some physical characteristics of the original host species. Thus, the cycle of infection can begin anew, as the new pure strain Genestealers have the potential to infiltrate other worlds and become a Genestealer patriarch. The genesis of a Genestealer cult is a strange and disturbing process. Though it obeys a loosely cyclical structure, many offshoots and bastardizations occur, resulting in a spectrum of anatomies from the outwardly wholesome to the truly bizarre. All members of this tainted family tree, even the non-hybrid members known as the Brood Brothers, remain fiercely loyal to one another, bound as one by the Gestalt psychic brood mind. The most powerful weapon of the Genestealer cult is secrecy. From the moment the infection vector arrives to the grand uprising itself, the faithful stick to the shadows. Those elements that emerge into the light of everyday life wear a mask of mundanity. Outwardly, its cultists worship the same deity as the host civilization, albeit a strange variant thereof. They teach extreme modesty, keeping their mutations hidden under robes and industrial clothing. Latter generation hybrids work tirelessly, respecting the old and cherishing the young. Only on the day of reckoning is the awful truth of their existence revealed. Those cults unearthed by the Inquisition have a common hierarchy, largely dictated by the generations and cycles of Xenos infection. Though variations occur, the Genestealer Patriarch is analogous to the monarch of this kingdom, with the Magus as his Grand Vizier and the Primus the leader of his holy crusades. The dynasty that serves them can number in the millions. Every iteration of the Genestealer infection can spread anarchy and disaster. Better known as brood cycles, the mockeries of family lineage that form the framework of each cult are all slaves of the Patriarch's greatness. To celebrate his magnificent strangeness by echoing his form is a privilege like no other. Though all pay homage to the Patriarch, each brood cycle has a strong internal coherence, and many will bear markings that bind them further to their brethren within the cult. Though the broods of each cycle are similar in organization, the Genestealer Curse does not conform to the strictures of mortal science. Anomalous bioforms rise to the surface with every new generation, for interbreeding within the cult is common, and tyrannid gene matter is, by its very nature, highly mutable. Even as the second and subsequent cycles spread the infection anew, the original brood cycle will still be active, casting the web of the Patriarch's influence ever further. A fully mature Genestealer cult is huge. It can number in the millions or even billions, perhaps more if it covers several worlds. The cult of the Pauper Princes, for instance, originated on the world of Chancer's Vale, but has taken its fervent creed to the Sentinel world of Vigilis and 15 other planets besides. The original instance, known as the Genesis Infestation, is the most numerous, but all subsequent infestations, sometimes known as splinter cults, have much the same coloration of chitin and flesh. There might be small differences in markings and even temperament, but they are cut from the same cloth. They may even use fundamentally the same heraldic colors to show their wider allegiance to the cult. Necessity often demands that these colors are adapted to fit in with local uniforms and societal norms, but armbands or tattoos are sometimes employed as a unifying feature, albeit often hidden from sight. All the cultists of a given world are known as an infestation, and each populous area can propagate several full brood cycles. All the cultists in a given population center are known as a gene sect. Some populations are only numerous enough to support one gene sect, but on those worlds that teem with life, several can coexist. Though each gene sect may further differentiate itself with markings and subtleties of coloration, ultimately they all hail from the same patriarch and usually work together seamlessly. Each gene sect has its own specialist bioforms and war leaders, including Amagus, Primus, and Nexos. These usually hail from the 4th generation, and hence can pass for fully human. So close are they in thought and deed that they and their peers in other gene sects may even band together to fight in the same place at the same time. These gene sects, usually at least several hundred members strong, are further subdivided into claws. Claws typically number between 50 and 100 warriors. Formed for specific duties, these are assembled and disbanded according to the cult's needs. Claws will have at least one leader figure that guides them in their mission, and each Magus and Primus will have several claws at their disposal, ranging from neophyte hybrid groups that can pass for human to monstrous broods of aberrants that are unmistakably alien. Once the cult reaches a point of maturity where it feels secure enough that it can spare the resources to spread, it sends out a Genestealer, or even an entire brood, to find new prey. These will either come from the original brood to have made planetfall, known as the First Curse, or the purest strain Genestealers born of a brood cycle's 5th generation. These vectors of infection will start a new gene sect should they find another suitable population center on the same world, or an entirely new infestation if they reach a planet that can support a splinter of the parent cult. Typically, each planet only has one patriarch, but it can have many Maguses and Primuses as its lieutenants in different parts of the world. If the existing patriarch dies, the next pure strain Genestealer to have infected a host on that planet will adapt and grow to become the new patriarch over time. There are exceptions. Should an infestation's outrider organisms find a population center so rich in life, it has the equivalent of a small planetary populace unto itself. The pure strain Genestealer that is sent out to colonize it can become a new patriarch in its own right. This will very rarely happen in contiguous land masses due to the psychic backlash in the cult's broodmind that could result, but provided the sites are sufficiently removed, it can theoretically occur. The two gene sects will be competing for resources and may even come into conflict. But when the Hive fleet arrives, the far more potent Gestalt hive mind of the Tyrannid species takes overall control. From the moment the first Genestealer hybrid is born, the newborn cult begins preparing for a world-spanning war of insurrection. There are other factors that can trigger a large-scale military intervention, sometimes before the dynasty reaches critical mass. Woe betide those who derail the cult's master plan, for its warriors strike serpent fast, and their vengeance is terrible. Genestealer cults are concerned with their own propagation above all, and will usually only commit to an armed action on their own terms. There remain exceptions, of course, for in the crumbling edifice of the Imperium, even the most watertight plans do not last long in practice. Each ruction, setback, or disaster is handled in its own fashion. On occasion, an incautious power grab or roving aberration may lead to the cult being investigated by Imperial authorities. If an inquest from the Adeptus Arbites, or worse still, the Inquisition, cannot be dealt with by a visit from the Magus or his minions, the cult may soon find itself under attack by anything from a regiment of Militarum Tempestus soldiers to a strike force of Death Watch Space Marines. Though this caliber of attack can eradicate a Genestealer cult in a scouring that shakes the underworld to its core, all it takes is for one tyrannid life form to escape, and the cult can begin anew. Such purges are uncommon, for the cult spreads its infection in the shadows, and amidst the vast sprawling confusion of the Imperium, there are millions of locations where one cannot be easily discovered. With the cult's members inducted from the indigenous populace, they have countless advantages. Those recruited from the underbelly of society are already wise to the best places to hide, whereas those from the upper echelons have influence enough to cover their tracks with ease. Over time, the cult spreads its creed from one stratum of imperial civilization to another. A mature cult with several brood cycles will have everything from sewer jacks, factotums, and autoproctors to high justices and spire lords under its sway. On the day of uprising, all the infected members of a planet will act as one, bound to the cause of destabilization and sabotage as the shock troops of the cult take out the military targets they have proven unable to infiltrate. This broad-spectrum attack has proven utterly devastating on hundreds of Imperial worlds. So prepared were the insurrectionists that, in places, the planet's infrastructure was turned on its head and then dismantled entirely in a matter of solar days. The entire effort is painstakingly coordinated by each gene sect's Nexos, whose simulations, tactical analyses, and hololith-guided battle projections give their brethren a vital edge. In conjunction with a Clamavus, an expert in both the dissemination of information and the disruption of the Prey's communications, the Nexos will convey their constantly adapting plans to the greater throng of cultists. Should something go awry, as it sometimes does when the Imperium's megalithic structure seeks to protect itself, it is the Nexos who drives the attack to victory along a different vector. Perhaps they will have to redistribute subterranean assets after hearing word from their Jackal Alphys lieutenant of a drop insertion force of Space Marines sent to stymie the cult's attack. Perhaps they will order their rock grinders to block the roads or demolish buildings in order to hold back the mass assault of a mechanized Sisters of Battle army. With curt orders and split-second decision-making, the Nexos will put into motion contingency plans and adaptive strategies that see the cult withdraw as one, only to strike elsewhere, for they are linked body and soul far more than any conventional military force. On a wider level, it is they who determine the optimum time for the cult to rise up in unforeseen circumstances. Where its war leaders may deal in faith and fury, the Nexos's role is that of cold, hard logic. The cult's primus, being a war leader, has a more aggressive approach to the propagation of his kin. He will gather a hand-picked army from the parent cult and then strike out to claim new worlds in the name of the Patriarch. Often this is done under the guise of industry, making use of existing space lanes and import routes to carry a host of Genestealer cultists to a new planet. In the darkness of the cargo holds, shipment autocrates will hiss open, and the Primus will lead his brethren forth. Should their incursion be uncovered, the cult will strike with swift and overwhelming force. If their assault does not take down their new adversaries in short order, they will scatter like oil roaches in torchlight, seeking shelter in the dank corners of their new domain before later regrouping. There are times when a host planet is attacked by outside forces, perhaps the target of a Hrud migration, a Xenos pirate raid, a greenskin wah, or even a warp breach. Most cults, nestled in hiding, will be content to wait for the storm to pass. But if the invasion directly threatens their interests, they will fight like a hive of angered hornets to defend them. Such planets teeter on the brink of catastrophe, rescued from one alien war host, only to find their saviors embody another, far more sinister threat. Should all go well, the cult will wait with the patience of spiders for their moment, generation after generation spent in preparation for the final battle as they infect ever more territory. Once all is in order, the intricate web of secrecy is finally torn away, and the world is plunged into anarchy. When a cult rises up to conquer their host planet, it is usually because a Tyranid Hive fleet has blackened the sky with the immensity of its bioships. The Genestealers and their human and hybrid kin are united in a singular desire to slay, to cause havoc, to destabilize and spread terror to every corner of the planet. Every member that has felt the mind kiss of the cult's progenitors feels it in their blood, a pulsing, desperate need to kill that has seen even lowly neophyte hybrids tear their victims limb from limb in a frenzy of semi-religious ecstasy. As the nightmare of the Hive fleet's invasion descends, even a small cult can shatter a planet's defenses. There are those worlds that are conquered by a Genestealer cult far earlier, claimed by the Patriarch's dynasty when the Tyranids are still hundreds of standard years distant, or even not coming at all. This may be because their uprising was triggered prematurely, because they have simply run out of ways to spread beneath the radar of their enemies, or because their Patriarch senses psychically that the Hive fleet that would have claimed them is now lost. As part of a wider onslaught divorced from its Hive fleet, it will have to claim dominion through its own wiles. These are in some ways the most dangerous cults to the Imperium, for like a virus spreading to new host bodies, they actively sow the seeds of destruction across a far wider area in the hope of somehow reconnecting with their star gods. Using their homeworld as a base of operations, they replicate their successes by any means possible, sending stowaway organisms and covert invasion forces to every planet within reach. Whole star systems have been conquered by such cults, the beacon of their psychic presence all the stronger for the Tyranid Hive fleets that will eventually arrive to consume all. The butchery the cult metes out upon its enemies on the day of their uprising is terrible indeed. Though the greater masses of these hordes are no more potent than a standard planetary defense force, their sheer numbers and fanatical devotion make them a fierce prospect in a firefight. High-level threats will be ambushed with uncanny synchronicity, for the cult has labored hard to ensure everything is in place. At the Patriarch's unheard psychic signal, the shock troops of the cult appear from crawl spaces, air ducts, grates, and hidden trapdoors installed by infected work crews but never used before this moment. The acolyte hybrids who emerge to fall upon the commanders of the enemy hiss and shriek as they lay about themselves with weapon-like mutations. Those enemies who a Primus has designated an extreme threat, those of the Adepta Sororitas or Adeptus Astartes, for instance, are set upon by the purest strain Genestealers of the cult's 5th generation, for they are the deadliest of all the cult's warriors save the Patriarch itself. Like a perfectly engineered machine of destruction, the cult strikes as one. Few indeed are the forces that can fight back. In the subculture of the Genestealer cult, every action, every uttered phrase, is another step towards a final destiny so apocalyptic it will devour friend and foe alike. Should the cultists achieve their ghastly agendas, each world they have worked so painstakingly to conquer will be stripped bare of everything, even its atmosphere, by their ultimate masters, the Tyranids. As a cult pushes its tendrils ever further into its host civilization, it prepares for the day of its great ascension. Though it may be solar decades, even Terran centuries in coming, sooner or later a psychic shadow will fall upon the star system in which the cult has spread. This is the shadow in the warp, the first sign of the utter despair to come. At first, the strange penumbra of this psychic influence sends soothsayers mad and inspires wild panic in those who channel the energies of the warp. The Astronomicon at first becomes dim, then shrouded completely by the psychic miasma crawling across the stars, cutting the star system off from the rest of the Imperium, so it becomes all but impossible to send reinforcements. Only then does the source of the threat emerge from the darkness. Starlight glints from a flotilla of celestial bodies, visible as a shoal of dots in the night sky. While these bodies may appear beautiful at first, their surpassing ugliness becomes more evident as they draw close. This is a biofleet of the Tyranid race, and it has come not to enlighten, but to devour. The cult sees the arrival of this impossible menace as the long-awaited fulfillment of their prophecies. They believe the Patriarch's kin, unfettered by humanity's failings, are here to elevate the faithful and lift them into the light forever. The skies cloud over, thickening with Xenos mycetic spores as the Hive fleet prepares the cult's world for consumption. Enraptured, the cult's true believers tell each other that it is always darkest before the dawn. Celebrations and warlike shouts ring through the streets as their devotional frenzy reaches new heights. When the Tyrannocytes rain from the sky like fleshy meteors, the cultists wave their banners high, hoping to attract the attention of the angelic host. As the giant brood sacks of the bioships split open to disgorge shrieking blade-limbed war beasts, a seed of doubt worms into the minds of the cultists. Still, their belief in the notion of star-born saviors is so ingrained they keep fighting against the wider populace. The Tyranid invaders mass together into a tide of chitin and fang, surging over the lands to cut down or consume the indigenous populations. With the hive mind guiding each brood, the Tyranid hordes do not see the cultists as prey. In fact, they are ignored at first by the synapse creatures coordinating the attack. For a short and blissful period, cultist and Tyranid fight on the same side. Once their adversaries have been slain, the cultists become eager to embrace their distant relatives in celebration, jubilant that their star-spanning family is at last complete. They walk forward, arms wide, into the seething avalanche of weapon forms. They too are torn limb from limb. Only then does the true magnitude of the cult's folly hit home. The mood of the cult swiftly changes from dogged loyalty to panic. The final revelation comes both from within the cult and without. Those the cultists once adored turn upon them in the worst of all possible betrayals. Any who seek succor from the Patriarch instead go to their doom. With its sentience subsumed by the greater hive mind, the creature becomes just another Tyranid, another nameless cell in the void-crossing superorganism that wants nothing less than to devour the galaxy. As soon as the planet's defenders are overcome, the Patriarch and its brood will attack their own, wicked claws punching into close advisors and trusted minions who die choking on their own disbelief. Those pure-strain Genestealers spawned upon the host planet attack their devoted fourth-generation parents without hesitation, slaughtering them in a flurry of talons and snapping mouths. Those of the cult who somehow survive this grim twist of fate flee as best they can, but they do not get far. The hail of Tyranid spores intensifies, and the planet itself is altered on a molecular level, becoming a noxious hell. Alongside the bodies of the wider populace, the corpses of the cultists are devoured and regurgitated into the acidic digestion pools that bubble upon its surface. There, they are dissolved into a sickening gruel, raw biomass that is sucked up by ribbed capillary towers into the bioships high above. So it is that the host population and the cult's parasitic reflection are made whole at last, their bodies mingled in the final act of this apocalyptic tragedy. Not all those Genestealer cults spawned across the galaxy meet a grisly end, consumed by the maws of the terrifying creatures they worship. Some rise to prominence, subconsciously sending out a psychic aura that attracts a Tyranid biofleet, only for that fleet to be flung into nothingness by a warp storm, engaged in battle by a conventional fleet, or consumed by a violent celestial phenomenon such as a supernova. These cults go on to propagate again and again, their brood cycles consuming ever more of the host planet until it is fully claimed by the Patriarch and its kin. Such planets become the cores of a spreading network of infestations that can cover several star systems or even span an entire sector, preparing the way for a destiny that will never come. In time, they may attract another Hive fleet towards them, though until that day they are free to reign supreme over their host domain. In a galactic empire of 1,000,000 worlds, there are countless planets upon which the Genestealer Curse can take hold, for where there is mankind, there is always biomass to be harvested. The Imperium's teeming herds have proven the perfect hosts for the alien parasites of the Tyranids. Mankind has intelligence enough to ply the stars, but not enough to overcome the combination of ambition, hubris, and curiosity that leads it into the dark and unwholesome places in which the Genestealer thrives. Unless specifically forbidden, or prevented entirely from doing so, the human race will seek to colonize every corner of the galaxy, no matter what terrors it uncovers in the process. This tendency, coupled with the relatively swift span of years between its generations, makes humanity the perfect prey species for Genestealers. The vast spread of its colonies, and hence the near-limitless biomass it can provide, have not gone unnoticed by the hive mind that unites every patriarch in a single intent. The human race has many instances of psychic talent, and these are getting ever more frequent. Psychic individuals are vital for the full panoply of Genestealer bioforms to rise to the surface across the course of a brood cycle. The frequency of psychic ability on Imperial worlds has been rising over the millennia, and since the coming of the Great Rift, there has been such a marked increase that the black ships of the Astra Telepathica cannot hope to quantify and harness more than a small fraction of psychers. Despite the risk of disaster, nascent Genestealer cults are more than ready to induct untrained psychers into their cult, knowing that in doing so, they pave the way for a magus to ultimately be born. This war leader will lead the cult to new heights of victory as the Patriarch's mind-altering influence spreads further over the host populace. Imperial hive worlds represent the archetypal targets of a Genestealer cult infestation. Possessed of massive, teeming populations, they represent a prime source for a new infection. At the same time, since much of that population is composed of a low socioeconomic class, a cult can spread quickly while a world's authorities remain blissfully unaware of the terrible curse spreading amongst their populations of workers and serfs. The Underhive region of a hive city represents the perfect place for a Genestealer patriarch to take up hidden residence and oversee the growth of his tainted dynasty. Imperial authorities rarely, if ever, venture into such benighted areas of the Emperor's domain, and the myriad small wars that often erupt between Underhive gangers simply provide the nascent cult with its first infusion of combat-hardened personnel and weapons. It is from hive worlds that more Genestealer cult infestations have arisen than any other classification of human-settled planet. Civilized worlds, usually populous enough to have high import demands and well-established exports to boot, are bountiful targets indeed for the Genestealer cults. Though the trading restrictions and security of such locations can be stringent, it takes just one mistake, one deadly shipment being accepted, for the germ of corruption to be planted, and once planted, it has 1,000 different ways to thrive. Used as a springboard, these planets may push a slowly growing cult into an accelerated brood cycle that can see it cross the stars. On the feudal worlds of the Imperium, the word of the king or queen or other ruling noble is law. Should that monarch come under the sway of a Xenos parasite, strange tithes, unsettling disappearances, and unnatural changes invariably follow. With most feudal worlds having little in the way of technology, the peasantry and knightly orders have only superstitious rites, swords, and shields to protect them from the clawed horrors that prey on them from abandoned dungeons, charnel houses, cave networks, and dank forests. There are worlds in the Imperium so lethal they are classified as death worlds. Their environments are anathema to Terran life. Many human warrior groups use these planets for extreme training exercises, and amidst the menagerie of deadly flora and fauna they face, a slinking pure-strain Genestealer can often go unnoticed. Some of these training groups will be infected and return to their divisions with a lurking doom in their midst that will soon be brought to whatever world they are sent to protect next. Cults with a pool of mechanized assets thrive in wide open spaces, such as those of agri-worlds. With at least 85% of their land masses given over to the cultivation of force crops, hydroponics, livestock, algae lakes, and cactus forests, such planets are not especially populous. However, the wide spread of their settlements makes them easy prey for wide-ranging Genestealer cult elements that soon have the perfect excuse to send their provisions shipments to other human-settled planets. The vast majority of Imperial worlds are militarized in some manner, but some are entirely given over to the production of Astra Militarum regiments and material. The most ambitious of Genestealer cults seek to infect these planets above all others. Though the tactic is generally high risk, if the initiative is successful, the armed soldiers and resources they add to their own ranks with each new barracks and base they corrupt dramatically increases their chances of future insurgencies meeting with success. An Astra Militarum regiment stationed upon such a prey world will slowly become populated by fourth-generation hybrid or brood brother humans who bear the hidden mark of the Genestealer within their anatomies. Soon enough, the regiment inducts new recruits with a certain strange cast to their skin, bulbous craniums and strangely pointed fingers. Within an armed force that recruits such divergent strains of humanity as ratlings and ogrins, mild variations of appearance are often overlooked, especially when the cadets in question are so efficient and obedient. As the generations pass, it is common for the infiltrating members of that world's cult to be grouped together into the same platoons. Sometimes they are recruited in such numbers that entire regiments are taken over. Such infected military organs take pains to stay incognito, and as such have only a rudimentary presence in the Imperium's armed forces and do not boast the wealth of munitions and war machines that a proven element of the Astra Militarum might enjoy. Still, even a basic military presence on a cult's host world is an asset beyond price. On the day of insurrection, those Astra Militarum platoons seated with the agents of the cult will reveal their true allegiance. Eyes alight with fanatical fervor, these wolves in the fold finally put their treacherous plans in motion, launching deadly surprise attacks upon their fellow regiments before joining the main body of the cult. In an institution as immense and diverse as the Astra Militarum, a force as cunning and sly as a Genestealer cult can thrive for many standard years before the horrible truth is revealed. On the feral worlds of the Imperium, those that are pre-Black Powder and may even have regressed to pre-Ferrous or even Stone Age levels of technology, it is simple for an established Genestealer cult to thrive by bringing powerful weapons, advanced technology, and complex tools with them. They are worshipped as gods. By contrast, a Genesis infestation upon such a world is a rare occurrence, as those pure strains that make planetfall find themselves to be the hunted as often as they are the hunter. Despite the strength of their population's faith, the shrine worlds of the Adeptus Ministorum are not immune to the Genestealer Curse. A Vestal robe can hide a multitude of mutations, and the labyrinthine boneyards and catacombs that riddle the lesser districts are ideal prowling grounds for a species as adaptable as the Genestealer. Those humans they grant the kiss to still claim to be worshipping the Emperor as they move amongst the flock, but in truth, their actions further a far darker cause. Where the rogue trader plants their flag, they say, the unwashed hordes of humanity are soon to follow. On the borders of the Imperium, new worlds are claimed in the name of the Emperor with each passing Terran year. Out there, the lawmakers and enforcers of the Adeptus Arbites are a mere rumor, though it may take a long time for a Genestealer cult on a frontier world to grow to full fruition. By being there at the beginning of a budding civilization, its members can infect every stratum of human society with ease. The pure strain Genestealer can, through the modus of implantation via its ovipositor, place its germ seed in any creature of the requisite anatomy to later sire a hybrid. Over the countless centuries since their introduction into the stellar realm of mankind, these extragalactic predators have started colonies within the species of the Orcs, the Greet, the Kroot, the Aldari, the Torellian, and even the Tau. They tend to choose ambulatory species of sufficient intellect to be space-capable, and hence spread their curse far and wide, and will usually target one whose population is dense enough to keep such a spread secret until it is too late for the infection to be overcome. The Orcs have proven troublesome as Genestealer hosts, for they can sense a wrongness in those infected, something that disturbs the strange psychic gestalt of the greenskin mind. The Kroot are much the same, though their avoidance of infected members of their society comes from their ability to taste pheromones and the wisdom of the Kroot shapers who guide their people's evolution. The Aldari have such lengthy gestation cycles that they are simply not viable biological hosts. Furthermore, their psychic abilities are so well developed they can often see the shadow of the curse even before it can manifest, and avoid it accordingly in infected members of their species. The Tau have a connection with their ethereal caste that makes hiding an infection by the Genestealers difficult. Only humanity, so manifold and unruly in its civilizations, has as yet provided an ideal host. The symbols of each Genestealer cult are uncannily similar, whether born on an Eichenward standard or hidden away as a brand of allegiance on a brood brother's chest. Many adaptations and interpretations have been adopted by cults across the Imperium, yet they all portray a similar stylized bioform. Each cult uses its own variants of the insignia as it solidifies its own identity, but will also display the core symbol of the cult, a long-bodied creature with ridges upon its spine that echoes the form of the Tyranids themselves, often called a worm. The fact that each cult's icons are so similar, regardless of where they are encountered, is unsettling in itself. Perhaps those that create them are guided by strange dreams and visions brought about by the hive mind's shadow in the warp, where alien anatomies whirl and bulge in sanity-stealing profusion. Perhaps the form of the Tyranid is encoded within the gene curse, rising to the front of the cult's collective mind unbidden. Either way, from the western reaches of the Segmentum Pacificus to the depths of the eastern fringe of the galaxy, those worlds that harbor Genestealer broodkin are emblazoned in 100 different ways by eerily similar markings, brands of ownership that hint at the biological apocalypse to come. The Achilles Ridge Runner is an Imperial light exploratory vehicle often used to scout out new ore seams by mining guild prospectors and newly discovered terrain on frontier worlds by geological surveyors. Because of its speed, range, and sheer durability, the Achilles Ridge Runner also has proven to be very popular for use with the outriders and scouts of the Genestealer cults. Goliath trucks are rugged transports originally designed to bear Imperial factotums through crypt complexes and mining tunnels. The vehicle's dense and robust construction makes it proof against the most hostile of underground environments, and its folded layers of chemically treated permasteel give it a measure of protection against every industrial hazard the Imperium has yet encountered. Even an unmodified Goliath truck can survive acid storms, hurricanes of forge sparks, malfunctioning rad chambers, and volatile toxin eruptions. Whatever damage they bear on the exterior, they keep those in their metal guts as safe as if they were locked in a command bunker. Whilst the cult lies quiescent, its Goliaths are used in everything from subterranean transit to stockpiling munitions. The Duraglass screens inside each vision slit can be raised to make the vehicles airtight, as useful for surviving the choking confines of a hazard mine as the poisonous atmosphere of battle. Their reputation is long held. Even the Astra Militarum has respect for the mighty Goliath. Though an ascendant cult will make use of any type of vehicle, from lunar quads to civilian stretch cars to mobile industrial macro rigs, the Goliath truck is always the most sought after. These vehicles are customized with all manner of stowage, extra armor, and sprayed-on cult symbols. They are acquired by means fair and foul by every cult that can find them, for they strike the perfect balance between unobtrusive civilian vehicle and pugnacious war machine. No one gives a second glance to a column of Goliath trucks bearing rag-draped miners through the streets, and workplace graffiti and personalization is far from unusual in the lower classes of the Imperium, so even the cult symbols stenciled upon the vehicle's sides often go unchallenged. Then, when the mind stimulus of the Magus or Patriarch signals the time is right, the broods within these vehicles throw open their hatches and burst out, some still mistaken for human even in their war paint, and others so alien that even to witness them is to feel the cold claw of defeat clutching at the heart. Built to the blueprint of a ubiquitous standard template construct, the Goliath truck has been modified and adapted countless times across the industrial worlds of the Imperium. Most common of these variants is the Goliath rock grinder. Though compact, the Goliath rock grinder is built to withstand rockfalls, dam bursts, and the fiery backwash of its clearance incinerator. Those huddled within have a great deal of protection from all but the highest caliber weapons. The Sentinel is a single-pilot combat walker that can traverse landscapes where a wheeled vehicle would swiftly founder. Though designed primarily as a reconnaissance asset to stalk the killing fields of the Imperium, Sentinels are so versatile that they are in widespread use even behind the lines. They are a common sight in the industrial zones of the Imperium. Hydraulic bulk lifter variants of this bipedal vehicle can be found shifting ammunition crates and ordnance cylinders in the shadowy dockyards and cache districts where Genestealer cults thrive. Such machines are easily retrofitted for warfare by the cultists that press them into service. Still more are simply co-opted from the military forces the cult has taken over from the inside. Regardless of source, on the day of battle, these walkers will be grouped together into two main roles, either used as lightweight scout sentinels for forward operations or as heavier armored sentinels that lend heavy firepower to the main body of the uprising. In terms of sheer piloting skill, the Genestealer cults may well boast the finest sentinel operatives in the galaxy. Those walkers that were once industrial machines have been operated day and night by their assigned drivers, neophyte hybrids who have become so expert in their use they can pick through a ruined metropolis with the ease a man might walk across a deserted parade ground. Such pilots make excellent independent assets when the time to strike is nigh. The scout sentinels they operate boast a powerful weapon system that can be fired on the move. They are fast enough to move into position for a kill shot, yet small enough to operate undetected by a larger force. This makes them ideal for covert operations. Often, a crack team of neophyte hybrids will send their scout sentinels loping around the flanks of the enemy army. At a psychic impulse from the cult's overlords, they will open hostilities with a punishing volley that can rip out the exposed throat of the opposing force even before the battle has started. Where scout sentinels have only a canopy of reinforced bars to protect the pilot, armored sentinels have thick-plated hulls, for they are built to operate even in the most dangerous war zones. Such enclosed walkers have the added bonus that no one can see the true nature of their pilot until it is too late, an advantage that is not lost on the cult's overseers. Those cults unable to sequester heavy war assets often use armored sentinels as tank substitutes, fitting them with las cannons, missile launchers, and perhaps even rare and temperamental plasma cannons. With such firepower at their disposal, the cult can theoretically take down even the heavy infantry and main battle tanks of an Adeptus Astartes strike force. The heavy firepower of the Leman Russ battle tank is legendary, and also much sought after by those cults that expect to engage the foe at range. Built to last through standard decades, if not centuries, of harsh conditions and poor maintenance, this Imperial main battle tank is a natural choice for those cults that intend to bide their time before launching a single devastating strike. Those cults determined or lucky enough to secure entire squadrons of Leman Russ tanks are a terrifying prospect, as deadly at range as at close quarters. These concentrations of force bombard the enemy from afar to crack open even the safest of havens, allowing the Xenospawn at the heart of the cult to get at their soft-bodied prey in the process. The Leman Russ is constructed more as a rolling bunker than as fast-moving support. Its primary weapon is the battle cannon, an unsubtle sledgehammer of a gun that sends high explosive shells hurtling into the midst of the enemy. Even the tanks of the foe can be crippled or destroyed by a direct hit from such ordnance. Sponsons are often fitted onto the Leman Russ's flanks, each bearing either a heavy bolter to scythe down enemy troops or a lascannon to crack open armored targets. With the foe reeling, the cult will often follow up the volleys of its Leman Russ squadrons with a devastating assault from the clawing, screaming masses of its throng. A Genestealer cult will amass a great many vehicles over the course of its gestation. In terms of popularity, the Chimera armored personnel carrier is second only to the Goliath truck. The Chimera is so common a sight that it passes all but unnoticed through the streets of war-torn worlds and the rotting understrata of Hive cities, just as the work teams of the Genestealer cult pass without comment in humanity's wider throng. Yet in times of war, this humble transport punches well above its weight. Its combination of multi-laser, hull-mounted heavy bolter, and flank-mounted lasgun arrays allows it to cut down Imperial infantry, rival gangers, veteran soldiers, and even light vehicles. As one of the workhorses for mankind's innumerable armies, the Chimera is built to a standard template construct standard. It can traverse all manner of terrain, from acidic silt to the rockcrete rubble of a bombed-out city, and even be rendered amphibious should the need arise. The blueprint for this rugged and adaptable machine, a revered relic of mankind's past, has been replicated times beyond count. As such, the Chimera can be made from whatever local metals a mechanic has to hand, or even from stranger materials should they have the requisite material strength. To an industrial culture such as that of the Genestealer cult, the manufacture of a Chimera, or even an entire mechanized regiment of them, poses little challenge. On the eve of battle, those Chimera transports the cult has sequestered are sprayed with cult icons and daubed with the blood of the unbeliever. Some have additional armor plates, auxiliary weaponry, or gruesome trophies strapped to their hulls before they rumble toward the front line, forming totems of defiance and conquest even before their heavy guns open fire. These stolen chimeras bully a path through the bloody earth of the battlefield, carrying inside them not the ordered platoons of faithful Imperial Guard, but the fully indoctrinated hybrid warriors of the cult. So familiar a sight is the Chimera that those on flanking maneuvers are often waved through Imperial cordons by oblivious officials, the magnitude of the mistake only becoming evident when the crew and passengers begin the slaughter. A tectonic frag drill is a form of Imperial mining technology that has been repurposed by the Genestealer cults to serve their own ends. It is often used to unleash a localized earthquake intended to disrupt the defenses of a planetary region that is under assault from the cult, or to deliver cult troops to a target area through subterranean tunnels.